I got fined for drinking coffee. Yeah, seriously, coffee. On my own porch. I wish I was kidding. They said it was about maintaining uniformity, but I checked every rule in our HOA handbook. Nothing I did was actually illegal. I wasn't loud. I wasn't messy. I just sat there like I had 100 mornings before. But suddenly, somehow, I became the problem. And here's the kicker. People around me saw it happen and didn't blink. That silence. That's what freaked me out the most. You know what I mean? This stopped being about coffee a long time ago. Every morning, 7:30 a.m. sharp, I grab my favorite ceramic mug, pour a decent cup, and sit on the front porch for exactly 15 minutes before starting work. Graphic designer, work from home life, small suburban street. My ritual, my sanity. Birds chirping, sprinklers humming, the sun hitting just right, steam curling off my coffee. Peaceful, predictable, harmless. Or so I thought. That Tuesday morning, I'm settled in, laptop on knee, sipping slowly, answering emails, when I hear heels clicking across the concrete. Marjorie Briggs appears at the edge of my driveway like she dropped from the sky. HOA president, 52, perfect hair, pressed khakis, polo tucked in, clipboard like a weapon. She pulls out a color chart. Yeah, a color chart for beverages, apparently. And I realize, oh, this is happening. Good morning, Nathan, she says, syrupy sweet, immediately putting me on edge. Before I can even blink, she's photographing my coffee like I'm some criminal mastermind. Then the announcement, you must cease this activity immediately. Brown liquids visible from public areas make the neighborhood look bad. Section 12.4, Community Standards. $25 fine. Violation notice. My brain sort of short circuits. I laughed, couldn't help it. You're fining me for coffee? I asked. Then, classic mistake, I gestured a little too enthusiastically. Coffee dripped on the notice. Marjorie's eyes went wide. Assault on official documentation, $15 extra fine. Emily steps out, my practical, level-headed wife, organizer of every neighborhood barbecue, and sees us, mug in hand. Wet violation notice between us. Marjorie turns predator on her. You're also in violation. Emily looks at her cup, then at Marjorie, then at me. Controlled irritation. Are you telling me coffee on our own porch is illegal? Marjorie nods, oblivious. Brown is disruptive to visual cohesion, she drones. Property values depend on aesthetic consistency. Emily tightens her grip on her mug, and I swear, I half expect a flying coffee attack. Instead, she just snaps, sarcastic and lethal. Maybe try collecting garden gnomes as a hobby. Marjorie smiles, completely missing the tone, hands over the violation, and leaves, mission accomplished. I sit there, rereading the notice. Brown beverages. Public view. Are we living in a neighborhood or a totalitarian state? This wasn't normal. Rules for lawns, mailboxes, sure, but coffee? Dystopian. The next few days, I start noticing the subtle war being waged. Silent looks, selective blindness, neighbors avoiding eye contact, Greg Turner quietly warning me. People are scared. Marjorie had weaponized the HOA itself. Thursday, I go to the community center. Emergency HOA meeting. Packed room. Marjorie's ready. Full legal brief. PowerPoint. Charts correlating Brown drinks to property values. I raise my hand. Marjorie, regulations don't mention beverages. She's ready. Neighborhood standards must evolve. Every chart, every slide, meticulously crafted, clearly rehearsed. Then she whispers to the treasurer, and suddenly he votes in favor of her ban. Just like that. 4-3, official policy, and the beverage ban becomes law. Saturday, we decide enough is enough. I set up a passive-aggressive revolt, synchronized porch coffee hour. Every neighbor invited. Morning comes, 8 a.m., doors swing open, mugs and tumblers everywhere. Giant mugs, neon thermoses, chocolate milk in clear glasses, iced coffee in mason jars. The street looks like a caffeinated flash mob. Marjorie shows up. Frozen. Horror. Fumbling phone. Overwhelmed. This isn't a coffee festival, she yells, citations coming. But with 30 neighbors holding beverages and cameras, enforcement collapses. Police politely inform her drinking on private property isn't illegal. Live stream goes up. Welcome to Neighborhood Beverage Freedom Day. I announce online, viewers climbing. Then escalation. Marjorie returns with cease and desist orders. Legal-looking papers, letterhead, multi-page documents. Crowd disperses. Emily and I retreat, oversized mugs in hand. Monday, official envelope from HOA Legal Department, real law firm, threats, injunctions, fines. By now, access to pool and clubhouse is revoked. My utility card flashes red. Digital forum post? Deleted. Silence is tactical. Stand with me? Risk violation. Front yard restriction arrives. Certified mail, legal seals. You are banned from front yard activities pending compliance. I read it 3 times. Banned from my own property. My morning coffee, my 15 minutes of air and quiet, criminalized. Emily finds me on the back deck, stunned. Intimidation is working more than I want to admit. The fines escalate. $25 becomes $140. Add $50 community compliance restoration fee. None of it authorized. Payment forms, deadlines, language like I'm confessing a felony. Then the twist. Greg brings me documents. Marjorie had filed for a commercial coffee kiosk 2 weeks before my coffee incident. Emails show phase 1 strategy. Eliminate outdoor beverage culture. Create demand for kiosk. HOA funds paid $3,700 consulting fee to her own home address. The coffee ban was never about aesthetics. It was a business play. Emily's expression changes. Confusion, anger, grim determination. Another layer. Secret documents, financials, architectural plans. Emergency board meeting looming. Marjorie planned this from the start, systematic, calculated. The blueprint for my ordeal revealed. Brown coffee had nothing to do with property values. It was competition suppression. Neighborhood aesthetics? A cover story that we sat there, absorbing the betrayal. The absurdity, the bureaucracy, the overreach, the legal machinery marshaled against a simple morning ritual. And yet, we had proof. Evidence. The moral high ground. And a story that needed telling. So yeah, I drank my coffee. Emily did too. And for a few moments, on that back deck, the horror of the HOA's totalitarian coffee crusade was tempered by the knowledge that we weren't completely alone. Our little rebellion, our documentation, the absurdity itself, it was power. I won't say it's over. Marjorie still lurks with her clipboard, still calculating, still weaponizing normalcy. But now, anyone who walks past our porch knows the truth. That 15 minutes of peace, a mug of brown liquid in hand, isn't a crime. Not really. The fight isn't just about coffee. It's about control, conformity, and courage in the face of absurd authority. So here's my call to action. Comment below. What would you do if your morning coffee landed you in a war with bureaucracy? Share your thoughts on fairness, justice, and standing up when everyday life is suddenly criminalized. Would you sip quietly, fight back, or organize a neighborhood rebellion? I want to hear it. Because believe me, this is only the beginning. I stared at those receipts, my hands trembling a bit, and I swear I could feel the air get heavier in the room. $3,700, taken from our HOA dues, funneled back to Marjorie's personal address under the guise of consulting fees. I mean, I'd known this woman was controlling, but using our money for her own schemes? That was a whole new level. Emily leaned over my shoulder, her jaw tight, scanning the papers. Are we actually looking at embezzlement here? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded slowly, unable to speak at first. Yeah, that happened. Greg looked over at both of us, his expression a mix of awe and anxiety. And it's not just the money. Look at this schedule. He flipped to a page with a detailed timeline of events, violation notices, cease and desist letters, community restrictions, all meticulously planned around the rollout of her coffee kiosk project. Every step was calculated, every neighbor targeted to create fear and compliance before the real plan went live. It was almost cinematic, except it was our lives. Friday afternoon rolled into evening, and the gravity of the situation sank deeper. We had less than 24 hours before the emergency board meeting where Marjorie was scheduled to present the next phase. The folder Greg handed me was thick with evidence. Email chains, invoices, architectural sketches for the kiosk, even notes on who in the neighborhood might resist and how to neutralize them. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This wasn't about aesthetics, wasn't about community standards at all. It was a premeditated scheme to monopolize a corner of our neighborhood for personal profit. Emily took a deep breath and rubbed her temples. We have to stop this, or at least expose it. People can't just let her bulldoze everyone for a coffee cart. I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of fear and adrenaline. Yeah, fear, because Marjorie had shown she was capable of anything from intimidation to legal escalation. But also adrenaline, because finally, we weren't the only ones who could see through her facade. Saturday morning came. The air crisp, the sky clear. We decided to go all in. Greg, Emily, and I walked toward the community center, each carrying copies of the damning documents. We weren't just confronting Marjorie anymore. We were confronting the system she had weaponized. Other neighbors started gathering, some cautiously, some curious, sensing the tension that had been simmering all week. You could feel it, this undercurrent of nervous energy, the moment before a storm breaks. When Marjorie arrived, dressed in her usual polished perfection, clipboard in hand, she froze slightly at the sight of us. I held my folder tightly, my heartbeat loud in my ears. "Good morning," I said, voice calm but firm. "We need to talk about your plans for the neighborhood and the use of HOA funds for personal gain." The room fell into a hush so sudden it almost hurt my ears. A few people gasped. Others exchanged wide-eyed glances. Marjorie's smile faltered, replaced with a thin line of irritation. "Nathan, Greg, what is this about?" she asked, attempting to reclaim authority. I stepped forward, sliding the folder onto the podium she usually dominated. "This. Every email, every financial transaction, every timeline showing how the so-called coffee ban was orchestrated before I ever touched my mug." I could see the color drain from her face as the room absorbed the gravity of what we were presenting. Board members shuffled uncomfortably, some whispering to each other, others staring down at the documents with disbelief. Emily chimed in, voice strong now. "This isn't about your vision of community aesthetics. This is a scheme to profit from your neighbors' fear and compliance. And the funds? That's our money." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with accountability that Marjorie had never anticipated. Then, one of the older residents, Mr. Hamilton, cleared his throat. "I've lived here 20 years. Never seen anything like this, and certainly never had anyone fined for drinking coffee on their own porch. Maybe it's time we reconsider how our community is governed." Heads nodded around the room. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. The air had shifted. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt like the tide was turning. Marjorie, realizing her usual tactics were failing, tried a last-ditch effort, raising her voice, appealing to vague notions of community image and precedent. But her words fell flat. The evidence was undeniable, methodical, and irrefutable. Even her closest allies on the board avoided eye contact, unsure how to respond to the mountain of proof sitting in front of them. It'd be why mid-morning, the emergency meeting had effectively turned into a full-blown audit of her actions. Questions flew fast and furious. Why were cease and desist letters issued without board approval? Who authorized consulting fees to a resident? Were other ordinances selectively enforced to manipulate behavior? The realization that Marjorie had orchestrated the entire coffee ban purely to facilitate her personal business ambitions was now undeniable to anyone paying attention. Eventually, Marjorie slumped in her chair, papers slightly trembling in her hands. I could almost see the thought forming in her mind. Maybe I overplayed this. But too late, the damage to her credibility was done. Our community, finally shaken awake from enforced obedience, was seeing the truth that by the time the meeting adjourned, the vote to repeal the coffee ban passed unanimously. All violation notices were voided, fines rescinded, and the HOA board agreed to implement stricter transparency measures moving forward. People began to talk, to laugh, to shake off the fear that had dominated the past week. Our little neighborhood felt alive again. And our coffee cups? Safe, glorious, defiant in their legality and simplicity. Yet, as we walked home that afternoon, sipping our mugs of perfectly ordinary brown beverages. I couldn't help but glance at Marjorie's house. Something in her posture told me this wasn't over. Maybe the legal path was blocked, maybe the money trail exposed, but the determination, the control, those wouldn't vanish overnight. And I realized, with a sinking sort of thrill, that our little neighborhood would never look at a cup of coffee the same way again. So, yeah, we won the battle, but the war for autonomy and sanity in our perfectly maintained suburban street, that was ongoing. And you know what I mean? It made me think about how easy it is for power to hide behind rules, to weaponize the mundane against anyone who dares enjoy a simple pleasure. Now, here's where I want you, the viewer, to weigh in. If this happened on your street, would you fight back the way we did? Or quietly comply and let someone like Marjorie dictate your life, one coffee cup at a time? Drop your thoughts below, share your opinions on fairness, justice, and the absurdity of power hiding in plain sight. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about coffee. It's about who gets to decide how we live, even in the smallest ways.